how do we show positive moments of love and caring in our relationship?
Okay, one thing you can do is show interest when your spouse is talking to you. You know, if you're on the computer, you're involved in Facebook, you're watching television, and playing with my iPad, and
turn the iPad over.
Or say, if you need to, say, I need about 5 minutes to finish this and close this out, and then can we talk?
A few years ago, we would say, put the newspaper down. But how many people, how many of you read your news online now? You don't have a paper in your hands anymore. So anyway, do the things that show interest and look at each other. It's amazing how much you'll learn if you just observe.
You can also tell, have you ever had the experience, you start to tell your spouse something, maybe you're kind of excited about it, your voice is a little escalated, your spouse isn't looking at your face, they don't realize you're smiling as you're telling this.
And or you have that little humor, that quirk, that smile.
Or that you're trying to be humorous, funny, and they're not looking at you, so they don't see the face and don't realize your intent of the conversation.
Next time you're a little tense with your spouse, take a deep breath and listen. And then, if you're okay with touching one another, reach out and hold the other person's hand as you're talking about this issue.
Just lay a hand on their shoulder.
One of the things that oftentimes happens in the counseling room as I'm working with couples is people will be telling something that really upsets them, their spouse feeling a bit sheepish or guilty or angry that this is being said in my presence. They look down. And when they don't look at each other, what they miss is the fact that the person who's sharing this is beginning to tear up. And the nose reddens and the tears may come, and they have missed it. Because what the person is desperate for is that you understand me, that you hear me. Will you respond? Will you care for me? And so in that moment, I'll say, could you stop just a moment? Did you hear what your spouse said? Oh yeah, and they repeat the words. I said, but did you see the reaction? What did you see in his eyes or her eyes? And then I asked the person who was beginning to cry, I say, if your tears had a voice and could speak, what would they say? And then they speak from their heart, and the spouse hears it. And it most often connects when I have them touch. And I say, could you reach out to your spouse as they're sharing with you? Can you listen? And it's like the voltage in a positive way goes up 10 times, and they get it. That's a hugely positive moment, even in the midst of a negative emotional situation. Well, showing that you care, being considerate, opening the door. It's amazing. There's this young man I know, and he's how many years married?
5.
5 years married. He puts me to shame. I am his father. He goes around to the car door and he opens it as if they were on their first date. In fact, sometimes she'll get ready to get out of the car. We've observed this. He'll say,
I'll be right there.
And he goes around. It's just you might think that's cheesy, but that's a couple that's tight with each other. And I didn't teach him that. I do open the door for Rhonda, and I usually let her go first, or I extend my hand to her whenever we're going up steps or something. But it's trying to be considerate, but I care for her so much. So find ways to show that.
Now, that may not be your particular way of being considerate, but find ways that you can show your spouse. And be empathetic as opposed to sympathetic. Empathetic means trying to understand the feelings.
By the way, either way, empathetic or empathic is good. It's in the counseling
depends on where you're from.
But it patterns. When you think of sympathy, empathy, it parallels. And so empathic or empathetic, either way, you're sensing that you're caring for one another very deeply.
Yeah, trying to understand those feelings, to understand that he's sad right now, or she's feeling alone right now. Just comprehending that feeling is a connecting point.
As you affirm your differences and are accepting of that, Also, there's a very good place for kind humor, looking for things that you both think are funny, not mocking or making fun of, but finding things that are genuinely funny. And so that's an important part of life. If there's a comedian you like, remember what it's like after you've been laughing for an hour. I mean, you just feel like you're on a bit of a high. Well, there's a biochemical response to that. So share your joy, celebrate, talk, make a big deal of that raise, make a big deal of that promotion. Or you've been saving your money and you've now bought this particular item that you've both been looking for, celebrate it. Joyfully talk about it and enjoy your life.
Be sure and share your respect and admiration for your spouse. It is so easy to get caught in the negative, and to be able to say, I really appreciate how hard you work to take care of our family. Or I really appreciate how hard you work taking care of the kids and making sure that they have what they need.
And you know, if you really want to up the voltage on this point, you know what you do? Not only sharing the things that Rhonda just said, but you also tell somebody else. Say, for instance, maybe things aren't going so well with your mother-in-law. Brag on her son. Because guess what? The most important person in the world to her is her son. And if you brag on her son, guess what you're bragging on? The product of her work and her effort. You're not bragging on her directly. That may be kind of hard for you to do. But if you brag on her son, guess what? She gets a blessing out of that.
If you can say, I really appreciate the way you raised him to be so polite and courteous, or I really appreciate that you taught him as he was growing up to
the value of work. And he really works hard for us.
Get you points with your mother-in-law and with your husband.
Yes. And you know, when you've told someone else about your spouse, and maybe it's on your Facebook page, and you say something positive about your spouse, and then somebody who read that page says, by the way, do you know what your wife said about you? No. She was bragging on what you guys did last Saturday, and da-da-da-da-da. I wish my husband did that, you know, kind of thing. And so if you share a compliment about your spouse, you don't do it just so it'll come around, but when it does, it is so sweet because of what somebody else is telling you they heard your spouse say. So what goes around will come around to bless you. If you say something that's probably not honoring of your spouse, that has a way of finding you out too. So do the positive side of that. We do have choices in our marriage. We can grow and amplify the positive of our love. That's a choice that we make. Or we can magnify
the negative. And that's a sad choice to make.